So they have that guy. You know, you go down the list and it's like it definitely seems like E3 is gone, which is interesting.
Yeah, crazy. Huh?
Yeah, that was my favorite. Like in general, I don't understand what happened with G4TV.
G4.
Yes.
I love the saga of G4TV.
Are we talking the entirety from like 2005 until now?
I'm starting from like the screensaver days.
Yeah. Okay.
To now.
Yes.
I love the whole thing of it all.
Well, let's kind of go through that because I have a pretty good knowledge on it. Like I loved Adam, whatever his name is, Adam Sessler, Morgan Webb.
Yep.
Olivia Munn came from there.
Hey, Olivia Munn.
Do you?
Yeah.
Candace is my favorite one who came from that show.
Yep.
She was on Attack of the Show with
Yes.
Kevin Pereira.
Can I ask you guys a question real quick?
What's up?
How did you guys stumble upon G4?
It was just in my. I forget which channel it was. Maybe like it was right above Comedy Central, I think, or something in my cable layout.
Yeah.
I remember when I was little, and like X Play was on for a half an hour.
Yeah.
I remember after something I watched,
especially after school. So.
And it was the only place at that time because there was no YouTube. There was
Right.
nowhere where you were getting
Right.
game reviews that I was able to go and watch people play games and talk about games. And I think for us, like especially, that was the first idea of like, dude, people can make a living off of like video games.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember, Dante?
So I do remember. Around that time, I was probably like a 12-year-old boy scrolling through the channels, and I saw X Play. I thought I stumbled across porn.
Yeah.
Well, Olivia
I can see
Munn,
that.
if you look far
I can
enough,
see
you
that.
might find
Yeah.
some.
Yep.
So when I put it on, I was like, oh, this is not porn. But
Yeah.
then I was just like, oh, this is interesting anyways. And
Well,
that's
just-
how I stumbled on it.
Wait, just for clarification, I am the oldest person in the room, right?
Yes.
Okay. Because you're, how old are you?
I'm 29.
Well, wow. Okay.
Substantially younger.
Okay, so yeah, you guys
Like,
came in.
Substantially younger than me.
Yeah, so
even.
you guys
Yeah.
came in. Yeah, well,
Because if he's 12, I'm 16 at that time, and you're closer to 20, right?
because I
No, you're
found.
not fucking 30, you're not 40.
Well, I'm almost close to 40 now. Yeah, because I found G4TV. I think Tech TV was the original name.
Okay.
That's when I found it. So I found it through screensavers. I come home one day, my dad's watching a show of these two guys talking about a PC, and like I was just like watching. I'm like, what is this? And he's screensavers, and they had a full set, and there's like a producer in the corner. It's like some girl talking about computers, and they're like, oh, this new graphics card blah 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 came out, and I had at that point tried to make a PC, but like had no money, and it was like trash. So I was like, oh.
And those years, it would have been trash regardless, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Trash regardless. The only way you were buying it was like going to like a computer show,
Mhm.
you know, and those were like a thing for a while. So I was like, oh, that's cool. They're talking about tech stuff I don't even know about. And I like watched it. It was very dry.
Yeah.
Very dry show.
Yes.
Huh.
And then they come out with a spinoff, which is X Play. And then they had some other shows that play off there. But like I say spinoff because Morgan Webb was on the screensavers.
Was she?
Yeah.
I didn't even.
And would do like a game segment.
Damn.
And then they were like, oh, we should just do a game show.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come out with that. So, it's similar to E3 in the sense that like you have a show grow and they think they know what people want and then eventually lose touch.
Because I think that's where we all learned E3 too, right?
E3 blew up because of that.
Is because that was like the most watched week of the year on that station
On that channel.
every year. And
Oh,
it was like that was 3 or 4 days of coverage.
Yep.
And that was peak when the console wars were
Yeah.
just starting.
Yep.
So you were getting the similar to DC fandom and
Mhm.
all those things. You were getting the exclusive content that they were saving for these like major releases, and you were like one day was PlayStation, one day was Xbox,
Yep.
one day was Nintendo,
Yep.
and you were getting everything that they were going to be pushing for the whole year. And they would even do, I remember you would get the Call of Duty like LAN tournament,
Yep.
or you would get like a Halo LAN tournament
Yep.
usually out of that
Yep.
too. And the fact that you
in case any of you kids don't know, you had to go to a friend's house and have multiple systems and plug them together to play each other.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean,
Shout out to LAN parties.
Shout out to LAN parties.
LAN parties were fucking lit.
Yeah, yeah.
The simplicity like that, like kids can have a sleepover digitally now. Like they don't
Yeah.
really have to do it together, nor
Yeah.
would you end up having to ever do like 4 TVs
Yeah.
to like play against your friends. But
Mhm.
I had friends, I had a kid I went to school with that went like pro playing Smash Brothers. Like
wow.
he was like one of the top 10 in the world kind of deals. He was the best he was the best I think he was the best solid stake in the East Coast at one point when I was younger. Either way, not really relevant in any way other than to say that was the type of game where you'd have people bring over like multiple like setups and like, you know, whatever. It was just kind of cool. On the G4 front, it's like I when you say they lost touch, what do you think was the thing that, like, because I think we all remember Attack of the Show and we remember X-Play. I think were the two that stand out the most for me. And they were the ones that had characters that went on to do other things. And I've listened to Kevin Pereira's podcast, Pointless, I think is what it's called.
Yeah. Does he still do that?
It's fallen off, if anything. Like I really liked it when he first came out, and then one of the first podcasts he ever did was with Candace Bailey and Sarah Underwood. Sarah Underwood also is an OnlyFans star. Don't know if anybody knows that.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Sarah Underwood.
Yeah. That's where she was already a Playboy girl at that point. She had already, you know what she was doing at that point was Playboy naked yoga. It was like the thing that she was putting out at the same time as
hilarious.
G4.
Yeah.
But I listened to them talk about it, and essentially it is like the producers, the on-screen talent all loved video games.
Yes.
And they all loved what they were doing.
Yes.
But everybody else who worked for the company, like behind the scenes, didn't give a fuck. Was basically the way that I interpreted it.
And that's the tales all this time. Like you have people who do a show who are fans of the content and what they're talking about, but they're not the shot caller. Yeah. And the shot callers are the ones being like, hey, we need to do this, do that. And that's what eventually will ruin a show, ruin a product. And, even doing a fast forward, at a certain point, they were just like, how, all dudes want to see is girls in bikinis wrestling in a pool of whatever.
Yeah.
Like on
I feel
set.
like Attack of Show definitely turned into that.
Yeah. And like when I think Olivia Munn, the first thing that comes to my mind is her in a maid outfit in the whipped cream kiddie pool.
Yeah.
Like that's what the show turned into. And it's like, yeah, those are cool for like shock value things. But like, I still want content. Like I still want a good show.
I can't talk about the first thing I think about when I think about Olivia Munn. Because that shit's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. But like at a certain point, they were just like, they all left because they were like, this is like a friggin' dog and pony show.
Because I think they got sold. If I'm trying to think back to Kevin Pereira talking about this, that essentially they had really, really good bosses.
Yeah.
They get sold.
Yeah.
They start trying to make a profit.
Yeah.
When they start making a profit, they lose their soul of what made the show the show. So all of the original people end up leaving.
Yeah.
Let's flash forward now to like 2018. We get like a rebirth of it.
Yep.
And it's essentially on the back of Xavier Woods.
Yeah. He was one of the ones that like talked about it because he was auditioning for it.
Yeah.
He
ended up doing it. Yeah.
Well, they had it was like a preview. The teaser was like going into a warehouse, like this dark and like dusty warehouse. And there's like this TV in a corner and it's like zooming in on TV and it like starts to flicker. You hear sound bites from the old shows. And then like I think X-Play comes up or maybe G4 comes up like on the screen. And you're like, oh shit, like it's back. And it's, somebody with money buys the property, says we're going to bring it back, but not being in touch with what's happening now, they decide to make it what they think people want to see, and that's what causes it to fail almost.
Have you? And I didn't really watch. I didn't watch a ton of it. I've watched it because it comes across with like Xavier Woods, being a wrestling fan, and I follow up, down, down. It's come across like for certain things that he's done, but I don't know what they were really like. What was their impression as to what we wanted? Do you know?
So they did. The first mistake was they bought out, and is it a mistake? I don't know because I mean in hindsight, it's a mistake in hindsight. On Monday morning, it's a mistake, but at the time, like when we talk about amongst ourselves, like what we want Nerd Affiliated to be, like I want to have a warehouse at some point with a podcast studio. With like a gym, like all sorts of cool stuff, like Joe Rogan's studio. Like everybody kind of wants that.
Yeah.
And
Barstool's building that in Chicago right now.
Yeah.
Dude Perfect is one that's like very famous for this. Like,
really?
Dude Perfect has like because of the type of content they made.
Yeah.
They bought like an entire sports facility basically.
Oh yes, exactly. Yeah. Actually, I did know that. Now you say that. So they were like, all right, well, we have to build the G4 studio. So you're like a lot of companies at that time. You're like expand, build this whole thing out. So they build this massive studio and then get these various YouTubers to come in to make content. So on paper, you're like, well, this sounds like it's going to work. But you're spending so much.
Shab also, I'm just thinking about. Shab's dealing with this right now. What you're talking about.
I love hearing him get.
Because Shab has the
Thick Boy Studios.
And he rents out all those rooms.
Yeah.
But none of the Mark Webb, the fucking
The dude with the hair?
werewolf dude.
Yeah.
Have you seen Mark Hurley? You see, he's left now. And he's been trashing Brendan on Reddit. And he's been doing all these AMAs and giving all the backstory to a lot of stuff. But his podcast, like, you know, he got the rub from Brendan coming out of Corona, all that stuff. And he, like, it capped at some point. His audience didn't grow.
Right.
So now he's paying Shab for a room, but his audience isn't growing the way that he thought from having a rub from being in the studio with him all the time.
Yep.
So now he can't afford to pay Brendan anymore. So now he has to leave and go back out on his own, and now Brendan's got an empty studio, and like people are hypothesizing right now that Brendan's actually like losing money basically because of
they have been for a while.
Like that he's expanded too much.
Yep.
His podcast costs a lot to make.
Now
the people he's probably paying people for Food Truck Diaries. He's probably paying people for Fight Companions.
Yep.
Like all, like, you know, he has look at the one he did for Jake Paul, and we're side tangenting right now.
Yeah.
Howie Mandel, Ryan Garcia, and Josh Wolf. Those people have no connection to each other or to Brendan Schaub. So why are they on a Fight Companion watching
that was a Fight Companion?
They watched the Jake Paul fight together.
I saw a Howie Mandel thing on...
Yeah, he shits on him for pissing in sinks.
Is
Because
that
Howie
what it was?
Mandel's a germaphobe.
Yes.
And everybody was like, hey, be careful before you go on a show. Like, that guy pisses in sinks.
That's hilarious.
And he like calls him like the very first. He's like, I almost didn't come because like everybody made it. He's like, dude, I did it once because like they locked the bathroom here and it's behind a key card and blah blah blah. Like, you know, just like back talks his way out of it like he always does. But you can tell he's awkward, uncomfortable, Brendan, during it.
Yeah. Well, because he was on an MMA meme page, and I was like, why is Howie Mandel on this? And I meant to go back and watch that. So
That's
now
why.
I will.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's essentially what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Like at some point you overexpand.
Yeah.
You know what's the weird thing? Because I think it's fairly easy to know what we all want. If you're a video game network, is it hard to look at Twitch and just be like, why can't I take the same premise that they do here?
Yep.
And we give an hour spotlight to a streamer, or we, you know, like.
But that's exactly it. The ones who make that decision probably think Twitch is still not a profitable thing to do.
Even though Kai Cenat has just broken the subscriber record yesterday, I think.
Yeah, he streamed straight for a month, right?
Yeah. I mean, like some of those guys, I've never really watched him. I've seen clips of him and I Show Speed, I think is the other one. He's the crazy one.
Yeah.
But like those guys, that's crazy impressive.
Yeah.
Like, you know, what those guys are able to do. So.
But even with that, I'm like, you know, and Vito Griswoldi, I think is his last name. Vito, I just know him as Vito. He did a bunch of videos on G4, and he was like, you could have just paid these people to be at home, help them build out their studio.
Yes.
That would save you so much money in making the content. And what's crazy is people now want to consume talking head content.
Yeah.
Like just somebody's face, there's a background talking about whatever, reacting to things.
Yeah, talking to you about the stuff you already like.
Right.
Yeah.
So like you could have invested in a lot of that. And towards the end of G4, they were doing a lot of that. You could have done like more content on like tabletop games. Like D&D is still massive.
We talked about Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Like I think anybody who piggybacked off of shit, because I never would have considered myself interested in doing anything D&D related. And then once they showed what D&D really, like how it can be, I think in that show, I think everybody was like, holy shit, you know, like this could be fun.
Yeah.
You know?
No, and it's huge. Like D&D's huge. It's a huge money driver going back to toys to Hasbro. Like they make all the money on the licensing for that. But you know, so there's different things they could have done, but instead they were like, all right, we're going to put people like in a room and like talk about games, you know, like barbershop talk to stuff.
Yeah.
And in a certain sense it could work, but then at no point it's like you're wasting a lot of money to try to like do that and
to build a set around it and to bring the people in to do it. Yeah. So
then, you know, you could also question like who they brought in. Like, did they bring in the right kind of people? Were they trying to bring in influencers? I think you should have gone the old school method of trying to build your own people. Like maybe bring in people who are lower tier.
Because Kevin Pereira came back, I think.
Yeah, because they paid him a bunch. Adam Sessler came back.
Yeah.
You know, but then Adam Sessler was so big that he didn't even go to the studio for more than half the time because he was just like, well, COVID was happening.
Is he that big? Because I was going to ask with those two guys, are they just big to the community because they're tied so synonymously with that show?
Big enough that I would have made this mistake. I would have definitely overpaid them. Because I would think that everybody wanted to see them.
Yeah, the nostalgia factor would have brought them back.
But then eventually you're like, oh, like I really don't care.
Yeah.
You know? So I think, they went too big. I think they weren't making the kind of content people like to consume. And that's ultimately what brought them down. But I think the final nail was the thing they did with that girl Frost when she did her rant about, you know, men are being chauvinist, gamers are chauvinist, and she came out the other day, did an interview and confirmed that she did that rant, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna push this rant. Like this is gonna help us get big." Clickbait it, and that's what defined the network at that point. Like it was so
woke
big
and fucking
it was so big of a thing that they were like, and they also added like laugh tracks to it, clapping tracks to it, to really make it seem like everybody was all in on this thing.
That's insane.
So what happens is the few people who were watching it were just like, I'm good.
Because I think the thing that's I think everybody has a side in the race pretty much at this point, where how they feel on one way or the other, and I do think people can be indifferent, but I think the thing that we're all united on is nobody really wants agendas shoved down our throat.
No, and
I think video game media could get very easily tied into woke media because the age group is very there's an overlap in the age group, and I think that we're the same people that would also be very turned off to that. Like I just want to play fucking video games, man. It's the same thing with watching The Last of Us, and like every other episode somebody's like upset because there's something gay in it. It's like, dude, like let's fucking move on.
Just enjoy the show.
Who gives a shit, dude? Like, it's just, I think we're all pretty apathetic to it at this point. Like,
I think the way forward is like the network, and I think of I hate to mention them because I hate that they're all about like anti-woke, anti-whatever, like everything. They complain about everything, literally everything they complain about. I think of like a Geeks and Gamers.
Okay.
Like Geeks and Gamers is like multiple people who make videos at home under one umbrella of similar to what I'm doing Nerd Affiliate.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way forward, is like people buy into like there's 5 million people out there who put out videos about The Last of Us, but you buy into the person.
Yes.
And you need a whole bunch of people that people buy into in one thing to create that network.
I mean, that's that Joe Rogan comedy club there, right?
Exactly.
Like he's the head of the snake, but all the people underneath him stay underneath him to benefit from him, you know, get the rub, so to speak, and all of that. Yeah. You know, on the G4 front, and like from the 2018 to 2000, like I think it just ended. They just officially called it quits again, like a month ago maybe or something, right? You know, I wonder, it's like, because Xavier Woods never needed that.
No.
You know, like what was the real, aside from nostalgia, because he watched the same age that we are.
Right.
He was watching the same exact thing we saw and fell in love with it. I just wonder how, for one, like, there's a million different thoughts I have going through my head, because it's like you have a guy like that who all of his ideas on his own show are taking off. And to your point, when it's like, just know your fucking audience, it's like you're paying to bring this guy in because you've liked all the other things he's doing. I have a shirt that's just it's a hoodie that I wear. It's to party, and it's got like the 4 of them on it, and that's a show that I found during COVID, like during quarantine, that they would just play Uno. The 4 of them. It was Tyler Breeze, Cesaro, Adam Cole, and Xavier Woods. They would just play Uno once a week on Wednesdays, and it was hilarious because like it would just fall off the rails at some point when they're like they keep knocking each other out, going back and forth, and it was so simple. And I'm like, dude, you could have cut that down. Yeah, you could have them play in person. Yeah, 30-minute episode, and people would probably tune in and watch that once a week. And it's such a simple fucking idea. Yeah, similar to what you were saying. I mean, like, and me and Matt had talked about this at one point, like adding in something to our weekly show here where we play some type of a board game while we sit here and shoot the shit, you know, a battleship or like those are very simple premises that, like, if you have the fan base that wants to see the people, now you're just using those as devices to keep them interested. You know. So
no, it's I as it went on, I was like, I fell out of love with G4, like the old version. I wanted still to see the tech stuff, but they were like, that's not what people want, and I'm like, all right, well,
it's just, so, like, you know, I follow Tim the Tap Man, I follow Nick Merckx, I follow, like, there's several big streamers that I follow, in the same way that, like, Tim the Tap Man 2 years ago now was a Twitch streamer. For his whole initial 10 years of building his streaming career, was a Twitch streamer. YouTube's trying to break into the gaming streaming sphere. They pay him a ton of money to make the jump. Ninja with Mixer a million years ago, right? Going back to what I was saying about this, it's like, what was stopping like a G4 of saying, you're exclusive to us 5 days a week for 2 hours,
Yeah.
3 hours,
Yeah.
you're going to stream Call of Duty for us.
The problem is that I can still I can do it on my own and make more money.
Well, so that you would have to make it cost effective for the streamer.
Yeah. But that's why I think it's good if they started from scratch.
Yeah.
Like you
They
have
build somebody. They
build
identified somebody.
Yeah.
So you have a team that's watching the streamers that have less than 100 viewers,
Mhm.
and you're just trying to find the diamond in the rough guy
Yeah.
to sign on.
Yeah.
So that you give them the promotional machine behind them. It's the same reason why WWE, when they brought in the performance institutes, they just bring in D1 athletes, especially now with the NIL deals or whatever that you can offer.
Yeah.
That they just basically are like, let's go to every Division I athlete and see how many of them we can convince, because they have the natural intangibles, and if we hit on 5 of these guys that can actually have the charisma and can do the rest of it, now it was like a no-brainer, and they're ours. Like Sasha Banks was a person that's homegrown by the WWE, who now you see she's flourishing because she went out on her own, but like this was all them identifying something very early on and kind of moving with it.
But even tying it to the E3 thing, at a certain point, like they had to be like, how can we change the format here? Because Xbox, PlayStation, all them, they're like, well, I could spend our marketing budget and go there and pay them, or I rent out a place across the street and do our own thing, which is what they started doing. Like it, little by little over the years, like Xbox, I think, or Microsoft pulled out and they did their own thing literally across the street from where E3 was happening. And then Sony's like, oh, I can do that too. And then with YouTube, I can just do our own thing, you know? So it's like, you have to kind of keep changing and understand that you're not the talent. There is a talent. You got to figure out where to meet them where they are and make it worthy to come over.
YouTube has probably fucked up the whole world for like,
a lot of people,
you know, because it is so direct to consumer.
Yeah.
Like it is, because all of this is always going to come back to like people in suits. I made this joke last week, and I'm probably just going to fuck myself by bringing it up again. I made the comments about Will Smith doing the Emancipation movie.
Oh yeah, which he said he would never do. I was talking to my phone when you guys were talking about it on the podcast.
Yeah, like I didn't even know that, because it's like I'm sitting here, like it's the same thing, right? Like how none of them are actually slaves in that movie, right? Like they're not, like we know that they're actors, so I understand that anybody can be a good actor. Yeah, but I don't think the person, what's that saying? I was trying to remember it last week, but I didn't want to butcher it. I know you'll know it, but what's the boxer saying? Like, it's hard to wake up and train when you go to sleep in silk pajamas.
And silk sheets.
Right? Like something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same premise to me.
Yeah.
I can't believe that you can play that kind of a role when you haven't understood that kind of a life, or you're so disassociated with it. It's the same thing to me with a bunch of guys that make millions of dollars sitting around an office table trying to decide what I would like as a fucking broke person who buys video games.
Yes.
I just don't think that you can speak to that.
No.
You know?
No, and you know, I bash some of these toy companies on a regular basis now, like it's part of my brand. From like, you don't listen to the fans. And today I watched Hasbro do reveals that I was like, oh, it seems like you're starting to pay attention now. And it's like, you have to, like, if you're a company and you're not watching people react and review your own stuff, you're failing. Like, you have to see what the critics are saying.
You can honestly, Steve, you could put out your product and then you could make money off of watching your product and commentating on it.
Yeah.
Like how, like that's what The Last of Us has, like the Last of Us podcast after. Like they have the 20-minute featurette and then they have an actual podcast so you can listen to it. And I'm not saying you have to be overly critical about things, but I do think transparency helps a lot of people, right? Like if you went on and you saw, if a director went on and then a week later did a podcast and was able to saw the feedback from something, was like, yeah, this is why I did it, but I can definitely see where people would have wanted. Like, I think that it's relatable, it's interesting, it gives you the background to a lot of this stuff, it gives you context. It's like, and it's profitable, right? Like, it's just like it's such an easy thing. You can control your own media and your own narrative by doing it too.
But they just don't. They choose not to.
They won't do it. Yeah.
For those with good taste.